as you go through your career and you'll have many opportunities to take different jobs or move or whatever the case may be, you need to strive to be at the table. That can happen in high school. That can happen before high school through clubs and athletics, etc. But when you're offered a chance to be at the table, I think it's really important for young women, girls, and older women to take the opportunity. Starting way back when I lived at home and had opportunities to lead things, I would jump in and take that leadership. I think you need to raise your hand. So to get a seat at the table later in life, you're going to start to have to raise your hand early in life. So you understand the dedication, you understand the implication of being in a position to lead an effort.
Welcome back, friends, and thanks so much for being here for another episode of She Lights the Way, where we dive into inspiring conversations with remarkable women who are making their mark in our world. I'm your host, Nicole Huesman. Today, we're diving into the world of a true luminary in food science, Dr. Mary Wagner. Mary has spent over 4 decades revolutionizing how we eat, drink, and think about food. With her hands in everything from Hamburger Helper and Betty Crocker to Starbucks Nitro Cold Brew. Her career has spanned academia, consumer packaged goods, food service, and even the wine and nutraceutical sectors. With leadership positions at some of the industry giants like General Mills, Taco Bell, Gallo Winery, Mars, and Starbucks, Mary has been at the forefront of product development, quality assurance, and tech advancements in the industry. She's a crisis management guru who stared down food industry nightmares and a visionary who has an eye on feeding the world of tomorrow. Mary's expertise has earned her appointments to industry boards and advisory councils, including a role with the USDA. And she continues to serve on various boards and remains deeply involved in mentoring and supporting women in STEM fields. So get ready for a kick-ass conversation with food scientist Dr. Mary Wagner.
Mary, when Beth introduced us, it was just so wonderful for us to meet, and I'm just thrilled to talk to you today. I'm very excited to be here, and I thank you for asking. I think we can really have a good time. Yeah, I think we're going to have a great time. Yeah. So can you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you and where you are in your journey at this point? Oh, absolutely. So I'm a food scientist. Many people say, what is that? Is that like being a chef? Actually, it's a little like being a chef, only much more science and technology focused. So I have a PhD in food science, and I've been in the food industry probably 45 years on and off. I started my career as a professor in Madison, Wisconsin. My job was essentially to communicate with the state on all things food and nutrition. So I traveled quite a bit around the state of Wisconsin. I also had a lab with graduate students. So I spent a lot of time in Madison in my lab with students. And then after a couple of years, I was approached to go to General Mills in Minneapolis. Now, I got my PhD in Minneapolis, so it was almost like going home. So I joined General Mills and was with them about 13 years. I started in quality, and then I moved into product development. So product development is Hamburger Helper. We had something called New Main Meals, all in Betty Crocker. And then my final job in Betty Crocker was managing all for desserts. So cakes, brownies, muffins, frosting. Yes, you can imagine all the things that tasted. And I did that for a part of my 13 years. Then I was sent to Harvard for an accelerated MBA course for 3 months and came back to run Medallion Laboratories, which is a P&L within the Technical Center of General Mills. The Nutrition Labeling Education Act was just launching, so we were in a fortunate position because we sold services, chemical, microbiological labeling services to outside clients, as well as internally to General Mills businesses. And then I was asked to move to Gorton's Seafood in Boston. General Mills owned the seafood business, and so I got married. I was just getting married. My husband and I moved to north of Boston to Gloucester and worked for Gorton's for almost 5 years. And it was a real fun time because I took on all technology, engineering, innovation, and quality for the company. And we had the Marine Stewardship Program launching at that time. So we were quite involved with that as part of Gorton's. We also did a lot of innovative products with grilling fillets, frozen fillets. That was a big innovation at the time. And we did things like made McDonald's fillets, food service type products. So a lot of learning for me. Then I was contacted by a recruiter to look at a job with Yum Brand, which was at the time KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut, the whole business was called Tricon. It converted to Yum Brand when they also bought A&W and some other restaurants. So I went and I was asked to go to Southern California and head up technology for Taco Bell. So my husband and I moved to Southern California, and I was part of the leadership team, and I ran all the R&D innovation, QA, and engineering for the company, for Taco Bell. We had about 10,000 stores, so it was real fun. Again, it was in food service, which is a totally different experience when you come from a packaged good. We launched grilled burritos. We also launched the chalupa. I was there when Yo Quiero Taco Bell was the big tagline, and we had the little chihuahua as our sponsor. So that was After about 4 years, we got a call from a recruiter to look at a position at Gallo Winery in Modesto. So my husband and I moved up to Modesto, California, and I was the chief technology officer for Gallo Winery, which is private. So I was reporting to the family and led all aspects of innovation, market research, compliance, regulatory, viticulture, and basically product development, wine styling, etc., for the company. And we did quite a bit during that time. Technically, we launched a mapping process so I could know a little bit about you and probably give you the best Chardonnay of your life. It's part of what you do when you bring science together with technology. So we brought that to Gallo, among other things. And it was a great experience working with the family. I was there 7 years. And then we got connected with the Mars family through the Gallo family and decided to go work for the Mars company in Rockville, Maryland. So we moved to Washington, D.C. and worked at Mars. And in that role, I was their chief science officer for the flavanol, healthy cocoa flavanol business. And part of my responsibility was to launch supplements using cocoa flavanols, which we did, and then also running the Indonesia cocoa operation, which supplied the flavanols. So I got to go to Indonesia pretty much every quarter. And that was another exposure to a totally different world besides packaged food and food service. Now I was working in nutraceuticals, etc. So that was a great learning experience. And then after a couple years, we got a call from Starbucks, and they were going to launch a chief technology officer job. So it would be global in all of innovation, product development, quality, engineering, etc. So we took the job and moved to Seattle. I was there almost 7 years and just retired from there about 5 or 6 years ago. So it was a fabulous experience at Starbucks because we built a center of excellence for all the things that we needed to do with product, both in China and in England. And we had the site in Seattle. So it was a great time to grow the group, to share the learning, to spread the products all over the globe. And the last product I was involved with was Nitro Cold Brew. When we launched that into stores, that was a big effort. And now what I do is I serve on board, and I'm on a few different boards, from public to private to startups. And also I do some nonprofit work. But that's my background in a nutshell. A little bit of food service, a little bit of packaged goods. I got into the wine business, the seafood business, and also into some that do both, like Starbucks. We did packaged coffee as well as food service. So it's been an interesting ride, as I say. It's been an amazing ride. It just sounds incredible. How did you find your way into doing all of this? That's a very good question. And one I ask myself even today, because all of us have a journey. And I can honestly say, when I was young, deciding what I wanted to do, food science was not in my mind. I loved animals, and I didn't know if I wanted to be a police dog trainer or be a veterinarian. I mean, I just did not know. So I went to school and graduated in microbiology. However, I had a course from a professor my last quarter of my senior year in food tech. And he came up to me and said, "What are you going to do after you graduate?" And I said, "I'm not sure." He said, "How about do a graduate degree with me, a master's?" And I said, "Sure." So that's how I got into it. Once I got my master's, it's like, I can do this. So I went and got a PhD, and then all of us were going to academia. So I ended up at Madison, great place, great school, University of Wisconsin. I think, though, that I probably was destined for industry. So that's when I made the leap. I never went back to academia, though I do a lot with them now through funding different programs and lecturing, etc. I really enjoyed my time at Madison, but I really, really enjoyed my time in industry. You've worked for many years building new R&D teams, really from the ground up. What is your secret to fostering a culture of innovation and collaboration within teams? That's another very good question. I think to build a culture, you really have to dig into, first of all, the personality of the business. I think you have to come in as an individual contributor, have that mindset that I'm coming in perhaps a job where I have many people in my group, but I also have people I work with and people I report to. So understanding the culture as quickly as you can, but at the same time, building out the people, because in the end, the people are everything that work in the business. So I would assess the group that I would be working with or would be working for me. I would look for gaps. I would see who could fill the gaps internally or externally, but I brought in the best people in all those positions I could find, either within the company or outside of the company. And I think the people part is the most important when you're building a team. So you have worked with some of the most iconic global brands in food science and in the food industry. What are some of the challenges that you've encountered along the way in helping these global brands? And how did you work through these challenges? Every brand has challenges. Every brand has opportunities. I think the most important thing in any role a person takes is to assess, again, come in and assess the personality of the business, the opportunities on the table, the wish list, and then to really put your expertise in the bucket and start aligning the stars, I say. In other words, once you bring science together with technology, magic begins to happen, and people realize that. As the funding comes in to do a project, more people come in to support the project. You have success in the marketplace. So I think assessing the company and then being able to communicate what it will take to get to the magic is a big part of what I do and what I did. And from that, the company benefits, company grows, people are happy, but it takes some time, and it takes persistence, and it takes communication. So in dealing with these different challenges that these global brands have, and coming in and really being able to make an impact and bring people together to form these fantastic teams, what have been the most rewarding experiences for you? Wow. So my rewarding experiences have been, per each business, the successful launch of a product, the hiring and performance of key people in key roles and seeing their satisfaction and success, being able to have my family be proud of what we're doing wherever we live, being part of the community. There's just so many layers to what I would consider success in positions or how we achieve success. Because for me, a big part of my success personally is to bring together personal and work. And it gets very commingled at times because you're either part of a very small community, a big fish in a small pond, or you have kids very active in a community and you become part of that world. So success is a blend of work and personal for me. And you can tell that by probably our Christmas card list, which is in the hundreds. Yeah. Because everywhere you go, you collect friends and associates, and they're lifelong people you will associate with one way or another. So that's how I consider, success through my life.
I love that. Where have you loved living the most?
Wow. I think that is a good question. We loved, not just me, but we loved each place we've lived for different reasons. My husband and I met in Minneapolis, so we're both from Minnesota. So we have a lot of comfort in Minnesota and people we know. So I loved that area. General Mills, fabulous company. I really cut my teeth in industry at General Mills, and they were so supportive. And still today, I connect with folks I worked with or leadership at the company. I think, again, Madison was like second to none as a place to start in your career. But then after General Mills, going to Yum Brand and working in food service. Food service is a different pace than consumer packaged goods, which we call CPG. Food service is very fast. Normally, a product in development can take 18 months, 12 months. In food service, the timeline is much shorter. It could be 8 months. It could be even less, depending on if you're just launching another flavor of something or you're actually doing an innovation, which requires technical development in some way. So CPG, very different than food service. And then when you get into wine, all of a sudden you're working with a different group in the government. TTB is different than USDA or FDA. You're working with viticulture. You're very close to the soil and what grows, how the grapes grow and which grapes go in what price point wine. So it's a whole nother view of how you do your job. But again, food science is linked to that, just like it was food service and packaged goods. Wine is an interesting entity. We hire a lot of food scientists as winemakers. So it's a logical place for people to come in and understand the chemistry of how the fermentation happened, how the wine tastes in the bottle, how you blend the grapes to create a flavor profile, how you package it to make sure you get the shelf life you need. And then moving into the nutraceutical or supplement world of the flavanols, I had to work with a lot of cardio doctors, and I had to be able to do food safety, we call toxicology studies, to make sure if people took 2 or 3 pills, would they have any effects that would be negative. So all of a sudden I'm working much more in the clinical environment than I was used to in wine, CPG, or food service. So a whole nother avenue opened up. And then when I went to Starbucks, all things came together, because not only are you making coffee, and coffee has caffeine, so you have to be aware of that. You're also making flavored drinks because you have a fast timeline, because you need new news all the time, every month. People want a new flavor of Frappuccino. And then you're creating food products, and food products have a shelf life, so you need to be aware, is it to be refrigerated or heated up? And you're working with very young people, like 16-year-olds, all the way up to whatever age. So you might think, let's serve alcohol in our Starbucks. That's not easy, because everybody who's a barista has to be at least 16 or actually 18. So you have a gap, and you have to consider a lot of factors when you start launching product. But that's what's exciting, all these different entities, all these different businesses. There's things I've learned in each one that I brought to the new role. And now it's just a combination of many things that I've been able to work on because of those experiences.
In addition to all of this, you've served on a variety of industry boards and advisory councils, including I think, an appointment by the USDA. Is that correct?
Correct. There was a board created by the USDA to help determine funding for research, to help determine some of the direction for universities or food commodities, et cetera. So it was a board that allowed me to interface with USDA officials. I've usually worked with them from one aspect or another, typically from the meat aspect, but I really got to get into their world of what they fund, how they make decisions on what will get government funding, et cetera. But the relationships I made on that particular group interaction helped me do things at my jobs that I normally wouldn't have been able to do as easily. For instance, when I was at Gallo and was part of this USDA board, the relationship I made with people in Washington helped me get the grape genome map for nothing. And at the time, it was very expensive. So that was at least $1 million of contribution provided by the support of the USDA to get the grape genome mapped. And it was due to the formation of a group called the National Grape and Wine Initiative, which I and other colleagues at Gallo started in order to get more research dollars to spend on understanding the benefits of grape, how you grow them more productively, et cetera. So the grape genome helped not only wine grapes, it helped table grapes, and it helped raisins, it helped all grapes. So all those groups had come together in our, I want to call it a coalition, but to help work with USDA to see what we could do together. And we got the grape genome map, which was huge for us.
Wow. And what a critical accomplishment that was to really to the broad industry.
Yeah.
So you, as across your years, you've also navigated some pretty high profile crises in the food industry. How did those experiences in navigating those different situations shape your approach to preparedness for crises or risk management in the food industry? Can you talk about some of the lessons that you've learned from those experiences?
Absolutely. I'll tell you one thing, you can never plan for a crisis. You may have a crisis manual, you may have a spokesperson identified, and you may have, here's the war room that we're going to convene if we ever have a crisis, but you never really plan for a crisis. So I think the rule of thumb is it's happening. You need to pull the right players together. You need to stay very calm, and you need to start documenting what you know and what you don't know. You may never know what caused the crisis. In foodborne illness, often there is no smoking gun. You work very quickly and see that you don't know where it got contaminated, but you do know what products are affected or could be affected, and you have to quickly take action to circle those products so they don't get out to consumers, or if they have, that you get them back. The biggest crisis I lived through was not a foodborne illness crisis. It was the Starling genetically modified corn destined for animal feed crisis that got into the human food chain. So not a food safety issue at all. However, at the time, in those days, GMOs were not looked at favorably. So I can remember that we had genetically modified corn destined for the animal feed lot. By accident, some of it got into the human food chain, and we were notified by some activists that we had a Taco Bell kit, home original Taco Bell kit made by Kraft, licensed name by Kraft. They'd identified some of this corn in those taco shops. So because Taco Bell is on the name of anything at that time, like these kits, our restaurants received the blowback as well. So quickly our sales dropped like a stone once the corn was identified in the Taco Bell name. So within a week or two, we replaced our taco shells with white corn shell from yellow. We had to deal with how this happened, how you measure it. It was something not planned for, that there was no measurements for genetically modified corn in a taco shell. So we did a lot in 2 weeks to identify it, remediate it,
And that's just what you do. You just have to slowly unpeel the onion. There's no other way around it. And from that came all sorts of activities that I had never planned to immerse myself in. But we got through it and we were stronger for it. But you never planned for a crisis like that of that magnitude.
Wow. And that is real grace under pressure.
Never for everyone, not just the person in the seat, but I think everybody has to just stay calm and, you do work your way through it because that is the only option.
Right, right. And like you said, you actually emerge with more strength. These challenging situations actually bring you lessons, bring you strength as you emerge out of them.
Absolutely. Look at Chipotle. Chipotle went through a foodborne illness issue a while back, closed their restaurants down, credit to them, did extensive training, cleaning, etc. In the end, they're much stronger for it. I think any crisis you go through, you have to come out the other side better than you were.
Yeah. So I imagine that the expectations of consumers have really evolved over time as we become more educated as consumers, that our expectations or our demands have changed over time as regulations have as well. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with the changing expectation of demanding consumers out there?
Absolutely. I think consumers in this country expect the food to be safe. If they even know where their food came from, it's important for them to understand the food is safe and they expect the food to be safe. When you start getting into products that aren't normally acceptable or might be new to the world, such as, let's say, cell-grown meat products. Cell technology is really hot right now to make beef, to make pork, to make chicken, to make seafood. And so that doesn't really have any guidelines from the government perspective. We know it's safe. We've done the work. We know the process to grow cells are similar to how you grow yeast cells for bread making or wine cells for wine making, wine yeast cells. So we know a lot about growing cells or growing organisms, and there's some similarities between. But there are no regulations that say if you grow seafood from a cell culture, what do you call it? How do you label it? What are the safety concerns? All these things are new to the world. So it takes working with the government for them to understand how it fits in, that it is safe, and help craft the rules. You have to have rules so that people believe the food is safe. Nobody's arguing that, but when it's new to the world, there's a lot of work that goes into it to make sure that people, the government, feel comfortable, that other manufacturers who might do it besides you do it properly so that nobody will ever get sick. So that's one thing. Another thing is when you look at organic, let's just talk about organic agriculture. Now you have things in terms like regenerative ag. Well, how does that fit into, how does managing the soil health impact organic? Is it the same thing? Is it different? New labels are springing up talking about regenerative ag or regenerative organic. So people can get confused really easily. There's still no firm regs for regenerative. There are for organic. So there's work to do by the government and the industry to work with the government so that together we craft the new regulation. So those are two examples that I think as new technology evolves, the regs are outdated and we need to create new regs. And that takes time. I would suggest we find a way to speed it up.
So not too long ago, I was listening to, I think it was a masterclass by Michael Pollan, and was so as you were describing organic foods, I'm like, what are we actually getting here? Or, the labeling, right? And I'm like, oh, I need my eggs to be called this, not that. And it sounds so similar, but it's so different.
And it doesn't always happen overnight. Let's say when I was at Starbucks, cage-free eggs became big. But there weren't enough cage-free eggs to supply all eggs. So who gets the cage-free eggs as they roll out? And then how do you afford cage-free eggs when all of a sudden you don't raise the eggs from the chickens like you always have? So there's time it takes to build that crop to get the new cage-free eggs online. So I can honestly say when I left Starbucks, cage-free eggs were our supply in the US. Internationally, China, India, other places, they may not be readily available. It takes time to get there. And I'm sure Starbucks has made inroads to get there or very close, but it isn't just like you can flip a switch. When you make a statement as big as that, I'm going to only use cage-free eggs, you have to understand your supply chain and how far you are from that goal or what you need to do to get to that goal. And we see that every day. I'm going to have antibiotic-free meat. Okay, well, that's like, how are you going to do that? Where are you going to get it? When the cows get sick, how do you treat them? Where are they going to be separated? There's a lot of complexity to it. It's not, and I wish consumers understood more. It's not just flipping a switch.
I think that's a great segue into sustainability practices. Sustainability is such a huge topic across many different industries. How has it evolved and how does it impact the food industry?
Well, sustainability is important and part of our language in everything we do now. Sustainability can be a very broad word, though. Is it climate? Is it soil health? Is it health and wellness? Is it social responsibility? When you talk sustainability, it's a very big word for very many different little pillars underneath it. So what has happened in industry is we get more specific when we're talking about it under the umbrella of sustainability. We'll talk about regenerative ag. We'll talk about the use of, CO2 emissions. We'll talk about social responsibility and healthcare. I mean, there's many aspects of what we talk about in industry or in boards on that subject. And some are more advanced than others. We don't have a lot of government intervention on things we talk about or things we do for sustainability like they do in Europe. It will happen, and it's slowly happening, but we need to be aware, and you need to start using the specific language in your activities in industry so that nobody should be surprised then when all of a sudden CO2 emissions become top of mind. Nobody should be surprised based on what's happening out in our world. I mean, just look outside. And the weather changes. I mean, it will be something we all have to deal with, even in the food industry. We need to deal with it, and we are.
So can you talk a little bit about the future of the food industry and what you see as some of the most promising developments on the horizon?
I think that innovations are so exciting. I mean, there's a company who can make a pizza with automation where they never have a person touch it. I think that's incredibly innovative. And the way the future's going, I think being able to do anything through automation will happen to us in the food industry. Any repetitive task will be taken over by automation at some point. It's just figuring out how we're going to be able to do a small batch versus a large batch, because automation today is very expensive to do in a factory setting. I think besides automation in the food industry, how we deal with labor is important. Labor's changing in this country and all over the world. So what kind of labor do you need to do the jobs you're expected to in your business? Is there anything that we can do to more focus the labor we have available? The third thing is probably AI. I mean, AI is just going to revolutionize so many businesses, and the food industry would be one that it will revolutionize as well in different ways. Today, it's just automation, but it'll get smarter and smarter in terms of recipe formulation or, consumer complaints. Things today that take people to do it, AI can nudge it to a different level and really help the industry figure things out faster or make it smarter in terms of food safety risks. A lot of things will happen in the next 5 years. Forget 20 years. It's next 5 years, we're going to see transformation as things start rolling out from tech and other places where they've used it longer.
Absolutely. So what do you think are the most pressing issues that we still need to address in the food science industry?
Well, I think the food science industry or the food industry, and I'll put in ag and everyone else in that, anybody who has anything to do that touches food, we have a big tsunami of population in this world coming at us. In 2050, I don't know, our population doubles, or, we'll have billions more added to the list of who has to eat. And when you think about it, just look at this country. We take good ag land and turn it into housing often. So our farm plots are getting smaller. The good thing is ag is getting more efficient. So we can get a lot more out of growing per acre than we used to. Some people would argue how we grow it may not be the most sustainable, but we're improving that with technology today, as we spoke about. New technologies coming in, new innovations for how to farm. So the goal is to be able to feed the population of the world. And that is the biggest challenge I see. I think every industry and all the boards I participate on are aware, and we do things from raising cattle with health and wellness in mind to being able to support healthy crops, to be able to think about innovative ways to make new plants. It just goes on and on. Everybody is aware of this. And the goal is we have to feed people. So how are we going to do it efficiently? How are we going to do it cost effectively? And how are we going to make these deadlines that are approaching as we go through the next several years? Because 2050 will be a big year.
So your roles in the food industry have been so varied. What has driven your passion for this industry over your years in the industry?
I think my passion comes from seeing innovation succeed. I love it when a product hits the consumer sweet spot and people love it. We sell it, we improve on it. It starts to be copied by others. To me, that's so exciting. So bringing innovation, making people believe you can do things differently than you've always done them, giving consumers a product they never thought they could have, all those things I consider super fun and very successful in the world of food. It used to be people thought food is just like taking an axe to a block, not a knife. But I believe that you can bring the knife approach into the food industry and transform it through technology, AI, all the things we're talking about. And I look forward even more to those, next few years, because I think it's going to be amazing to see.
Yeah. You've been involved in some organizations that help propel women in your industry. Why is this work important to you, and what advice would you give to other aspiring women leaders in food science?
As you go through your career, and you'll have many opportunities to take different jobs or move or whatever the case may be, you need to strive to be at the table. That can happen in high school. That can happen before high school through clubs and athletics, etc. But when you're offered a chance to be at the table, I think it's really important for young women, girls, and older women to take the opportunity. Starting way back when I lived at home and had opportunities to lead things, I would jump in and take that leadership. I think you need to raise your hand. So to get a seat at the table later in life, you're going to start to have to raise your hand early in life. So you understand the dedication, you understand the implication of being in a position to lead an effort. I have spent my time in various functions. I was on the board of Girls Inc. I was chairman of Washington STEM. I've been president of IFT, where I would bring girls every year to the annual meeting to expose them to the food industry. I raise the money to do that myself. So that just shows you have to roll up your sleeves to do some of this. It just doesn't happen if you command that it happen. You have to actually do it yourself. And I'm still involved with my alma mater, University of Minnesota, where my husband and I sponsor women in technology to be exposed to marketing programs before they graduate so they can understand how to read a spreadsheet and do financials and understand operations a little bit. It's a very accelerated type approach, but we thought it's important to have women exposed to business who are in technology before they graduate and go on to their jobs. It'll just get them to a seat at the table faster. So things that I see through my years that I'm trying to help develop in younger women will get them there. But it all comes down to you have to strive to want a seat at the table in order to make change. So that's what I would recommend.
You talked earlier about your personal and your professional lives melding and being integrated. And I know so often we talk about work-life balance. And honestly, I'm not really even sure that that exists, or that, that we're balanced all of the time. But I wonder, from your perspective, are there any sacrifices or compromises that you needed to make along the way? And what wisdom can you share with the rest of us?
Oh, good question. Good question. I think that when you go through life and you want a seat at the table or you want to excel in your role, there will be sacrifice. I mean, to say there are never sacrifices, I don't believe it. Even if it's making a decision on, do I eat first or last at night? You have to make some sacrifices. In my life, the biggest sacrifice, I think, was time away from the family. For instance, when I was at Starbucks, I commuted for 5 of my 7 years from Seattle to Washington, D.C., leaving on Friday, coming back on Monday. And I paid for it myself. We paid for it myself so that I could be home on the weekend. The girls were in high school, wanted to give them a chance to graduate. So you make some sacrifices. But I was there on the weekend for at least 3 nights a week. And that you give up some things, but you gain a lot of other things by doing that. But the second thing, besides making some sacrifices, just know that you will have to do it in some aspect, is finding the right partner. If you want to have a partner in life, I think finding the right partner who goes on the journey with you is so critical, because we couldn't have done what we did. And I also say if we hadn't had that partnership, because he stayed home and I worked. And that, first of all, is the first fork in the road that we had. You could both work and we could get a nanny. We could do all that. And that's all good. But for us, we made a conscious decision to have one of us work and one stay home. And it was, magical in many ways, sacrifice in many ways. But, it's 32 years later, and here we are.
Yeah.
The kids seem to be doing okay.
Yeah. And wow, what a life. I can only imagine what that was like. I completely concur with you, or I completely agree with you that the partner that you choose in life is so important to that overall decision. I certainly have a partner who has supported me in the different decisions that I've made, including forging the She Lights the Way project. And the reason that I'm able to do this is that he supports me. And so often I think of, wow, if I didn't have that support, there would be avenues that just wouldn't be available to me. So I
agree. You have to have that support and compromise, because life's made up of a compromise every day, from who makes the coffee in the morning to, who shuts out the light at night. It is a compromise.
It is.
It changes everything, right?
It is, yes. Absolutely.
You will go back and forth every day, every hour, but you have a flow and a pattern of trust and reliability. And I mean, whoever it is you're with, or if you're not with anybody and you've got friends who help you out, that's enough. You rely on them and they rely on you. And it's just the nature of us as people that we need a support network to do what we do. Every woman will, in whatever field she chooses, if it's being at home or if it's working or doing both, you will need a support system. And you just need to recognize that and accept it and embrace it.
So, Mary, you have done such amazing things, and you're still involved in boards and councils. And I wonder, as you look forward, what are you most excited about? What's next?
Wow. For me, for industry, I think the innovations coming our way and my involvement to be at the table to see how things are evolving is so exciting for me. So exciting. I just see it as many years to come, being involved with all the exciting things happening in the food industry. For me personally, I look forward to travel with my husband. I look forward to participating in some fun family activities. But again, I intertwine personal and work, and I always have. For instance, every year my husband and I take a group of food science-based people to the wine industry. We go all over California, Oregon. Depending on the year, we've done this now for over 20 years. And we get from anywhere from 30 to 50 people. So we arrange everything. People just write us a check for what the evenings cost and the buses cost. But in the end, we've done it, and we mix it up because it's people from industry, my industry, but it's also us taking them out and enjoying friendship. So that's part of just an example of how you combine work and pleasure. So I look forward to those events. I look forward to some conventions and meeting new people. I've gotten more familiar with the world of investors, and so I've gotten to have some good friends. The friendships develop from that. So, you just start broadening your network again, and it's so much fun. I look forward to that.
Wow, it sounds amazing. Can you talk about what She Lights the Way means to you?
I think that every woman has a spark that will catapult them into whatever they frame as success for them. And you need to take time to nurture and understand what would light your spark. And I think lighting the way is a good example of, I've been in my career and have many opportunities, but everybody who has a chance to go into a working field or through the work they do, creating their own business or their own podcast, I think you need to find your spark and don't try to put it out. Try to keep it going because life's not easy and people may try to put it out for you, or companies might. You have to listen to your heart, your guts, and make that spark happen. So I think it's letting women know you've got it in you. Don't be afraid to use it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. It's just been magical. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
It's always riveting and exciting to talk with you. So I appreciate you offering me the opportunity, and I look forward to hearing about all the other podcasts and participants as well, because you really have something going, something special. So it's exciting to me. So keep that spark.
And there you have it, a glimpse into the amazing world of food scientist Dr. Mary Wagner, from academia to the boardrooms of global food icons. Mary's insights on innovation, sustainability, and the future of food are a call to action for all of us to consider our role in shaping a more sustainable and equitable food system. If you're hungry for more of her wisdom, you can follow her work and stay up to date on her latest endeavors through her LinkedIn profile. That link is in the show notes. And hey, if this episode lit a fire in you like it did for me, why not share it with a friend who could use a dose of badass motivation? As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated most from our conversation? What questions did it spark? Drop me a note at nicole@shelightstheway.com or leave a comment on any of the social handles for the project. In Mary's words, you've got that spark in you, so don't be afraid to use it. Until next time, keep lighting the way.